Harold naturally looked down upon Charlie by 10,000. And he was full of resentment towards Claire, then the company director. Seeing that the couple came to Thompson to see the house, they wanted to seize the opportunity to satirize them. When Charlie heard that Harold dared to spray on him and his wife, he immediately sneered, "What? People like you can come to Thompson for inspection, why can't we?" Harold sneered and said, "I can come because our family can afford it. Can you afford to buy a house here?" Charlie smiled, "How do you know that I can't afford it?" Harold snorted, "How can you afford to have a ghost? Do you know how much this house is? The smallest one is 120 square meters, more than 80,000 square meters, and it costs 10 million. 10 million, you hear?" Charlie laughed, "I don't bother to buy the smallest house. If I want to buy it, I will also buy the largest." "You're poo." Harold said coldly, "The biggest 240 flats can you afford?" Wendy also laughed. "Yeah, Charlie, can you afford a 240 square meters house? Such a big house, even our family can't buy it. How can you?" Charlie looked at her, smiled and asked, "Who told you that I want to buy a house of 240 square meters? Wendy snorted contemptuously. "What? Didn't you say you want to buy the biggest one? Can't install it now?" Charlie laughed and said, "Wendy, you are so unpromising. Didn't you see that there is a large villa area on this table? The villa inside is the largest house." "Bah!" Wendy said disdainfully. Returning the villa, the smallest villa inside is tens of millions, and the expensive one is even hundreds of millions. You can't afford it for 8 lifetimes with your rag life." Charlie smiled and said, "What a coincidence, I just have one set, and it's the biggest one." Ha 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 ha. Harold's family laughed forward and backwards, pointing to Charlie and said contemptuously, "You still buy the largest villa? My God, are you laughing at us too?" Many customers who watched the house also heard Charlie's words, and laughed one by one. "It looks like a stinky rag, and he's still buying a villa? If he can afford this villa, then I can afford the entire Thompson product. It's really bragging not to write drafts." Claire's face was also a little unsustainable, and she whispered in Charlie's ear, "Charlie, what are you talking nonsense? Aren't you ashamed of talking nonsense?" Charlie smiled and said, "What's the shame, to be honest?" Harold smiled backwards and closed together, and said, "Have you heard? Your own wife doesn't believe you, and the eyes of the people are sharp. People like you are not even fit to enter this sales hall." After speaking, he said viciously, "Wait, I will tell the sales lady to drive you out." Immediately afterwards, Harold immediately greeted a sales lady who came over and pointed to Charlie and said, "Beauty, what's the matter with you? Why did you let such rubbish rag in?" This kind of person said without embarrassment to buy your best villa. With such people in the most expensive villa here, those of us who are really capable of buying a house don't want to take it. The sales lady glanced at Charlie, and she could also see that Charlie's clothes were ordinary, not what a rich man should have. Not to mention buying a villa, even the client who buys the smallest 3-bedroom apartment is more decent than him. The surrounding people also started to booze, saying, "Hurry up and get this guy out, it affects our mood too much." The sales lady walked up to Charlie and said, "Gentlemen, if you are not going to buy a house, please leave, and don't affect our other customers who are interested in the houses." Claire sighed, pulled Charlie's sleeves, and said, let's go and take a look elsewhere." Others also started to roar, "Poor ghosts, go quickly, don't be embarrassed here." Charlie didn't move, and said with a smile, "Do you know why you can't afford to live in a villa? Because you are all short-sighted people. With your eyesight, it is impossible for you to live in a villa in this life." Harold sipped. "Bah! Charlie, you really have a face to say? Look at all of them, which one is not more rich than you?" Charlie raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Harold, you keep saying that I can't afford a villa, so if I really can afford it, what shall you do?" Harold laughed a lot, pointed to the tallest high-rise building on the sand table, and said arrogantly, "If you can afford the villa inside, I, Harold, will jump off the top of this building." Many people around screamed, "Smelly popper, if you can afford it, I will dance too. That's it. If you want to jump, you can count me as well." I don't like this kind of stupid who likes to pretend. Claire never felt so embarrassed, and complained a bit to Charlie, and reprimanded, Charlie. What do you have to do with them here? Do you have to be happy not to come to this place? Charlie smiled slightly and said, my wife, how do you know if your husband knows nothing? With that, Charlie took out the villa key and the villa's access card from his pocket, and said lightly, look, this is the key and information card of the A05 villa. Wendy smiled and said, Charlie, do you think you can make us believe you by just holding the key? You think we are too mentally retarded? Charlie threw the key and the information card to the sales lady, and said lightly, come on, tell them if this is true. The sales lady recognized the key and information card that Charlie had taken out at a glance, and when she saw that they were exclusively for the Thompson villa, she was shocked. Could it be that this person is really the owner of the villa area? She just wanted to kick him out. If he is really the owner, if he gets angry, her job will definitely be gone. Thinking of this, she took Charlie's information card in a panic, scanned the internal reader, and the reader immediately issued a computer voice. Hi, distinguished owner of building A05, Mr. Charlie, welcome to your home.